Okay, how to understand the will of YHVH for your life. Now that we've already discussed the 7 characteristics of God that should be in us, we are ready to tackle how God's purpose and plan, His will for your life, was revealed in the book that I call the Seed Book. That's the book of Genesis. Now, just so you know in advance, if you're listening to this, so I don't want to waste anyone's time here. If you believe that Genesis is a metaphorical book, if you have been seminarily taught that the books, that the Bible or Bible verses or Bible books are not to be taken literally, but as a metaphor, then you will not understand what I will say next. If you are not, if the God you serve is not large enough that He can teach you more than one lesson at a time, meaning He can show you things that do apply metaphorically, but that they also have a literal foundation, then you're not going to get this. I can tell you that right now. So, having said that, moving forward, for those of you who are not so unenlightened, the rest of what I have to say will apply to you. Okay, so let me go back to the beginning. Now, before we get to the beginning, I'm going to take you to Isaiah 46, 9 through 10, because it is the framework in which you're going to understand how in the creation week, Genesis chapter 1, God reveals what your purpose and plan is from the foundation of the world. Because you were a foundational thought in the eyes of God. You were not some happenstance, some cosmic boom, some explosion, or some evolutionary concoction. You were foundationally a thought in the plan of God. So much so that everything He did leading up to the day that you were created was necessary for you in order for you to inhabit the space that He created. So He was setting up everything else so that we would be able to live in the space that He created. So having said that, Isaiah 46, 9 through 10 tells us that God declared the end from the beginning, and from ancient times, things that are not yet done. So, one thing that I want you to understand is that there are things that God is doing that He has already declared from the beginning that these things will happen in the end. So there's 2 things I want you to think about that process. Not only were you a thought, like we already discussed, in the plan of God from the very beginning, but God already sees your end from the very beginning. So He already has everything put in place. And if I can explain it this way, we put fire extinguishers in our house, not because we plan on setting our house ablaze, but we put fire extinguishers in our house because we already pre-planned for the unlikely event, but possible event, that a fire could occur in our house. So we've already decided what our next course of action will be should a fire occur. The same thing happens with us. See, God has already pre-planned that if we choose to follow Him, that He already has a laid out plan for our life. He's not just trying to figure it out as He goes along. So therefore, you don't need a plan B if you are in the plan of God. But if we decide that we're going to go in our own direction, take our own course of action, then He also has a plan. There's a place, in other words, that's already prepared for us. It's like the fire extinguisher is put into our homes. There's a place that's already prepared for us if we have chosen not to be with Him. So though His purpose and His plan for our lives is that we be saved, because his desire is that none shall perish, but that all come to repentance. If in the unlikely event we decide that we want to do something different from what's a part of the status quo, he already has a place for us. There's already a solution. He's not trying to figure out where we're going to go. That is already being pre-decided. So we can either choose to live and be with the loving God who desires to have us and who has space for us. Because believe it or not, there is space for every single person that inhabits this earth in the plan of God. But not every single person who inhabits this earth is going to choose his plan nor choose God. And so therefore, he has a place that they can be if he is not the choice that they want to be with. And that place is not a place that anyone should want to be. But unfortunately, there will be many who will be there. So I say that to say that if you want to understand the will of God for your life, it's going to be important that in the next 7 sessions that I do, that I explain to you, or that in these 7 sections, I explain to you how every single day in the creation week outlines God's purpose and plan for your life. Because we're not going to talk about the negative. I'm already assuming that if you're listening to what I'm putting on this website or on my Facebook group, that you've already made a decision that your desire is to walk in the will and the plan of God. So therefore, we don't have to even discuss what the negative alternative is, because that doesn't apply to you. However, we do want to make it clear so that if you have loved ones who are vacillating, who are in a valley of decision trying to figure out which direction to go, that they do have a choice, but that they do have a loving God who had this plan from the beginning for them, so that they can choose to be with him. Because ultimately, though the hellfire is where you'll go if you reject God, is a message that is very effective in getting people to come into the kingdom of God, the bottom line is we don't want, the bottom line is ultimately God doesn't want to be our default option. You know what I mean? Like, okay, well, the only reason why I want to be with you is because I'm trying to escape hell. Ideally, for us to maximize God's purpose and plan for our life, we should have the desire that we want to do what the Father says, because we don't want to be a day without his presence. We don't want to be a day away from him, because we love him. That should be the motive, because if that is the motivation of your heart, not only will you get into the pearly gates, but where you'll be seated in that gate and what crowns will be offered to you, what rewards will be offered to you, will be so much greater, because you will do what the Father says because you desire to, because you want to be with him. So our love walk is completely determined by us. And to what degree we have a loving relationship with God is also determined by us. You know, I think about John, the apostle whom Christ loved. And I always say this, Jesus didn't have any favorites. I don't believe that's what that is saying. I believe what that is saying is that John wanted to be closer to God than the rest. Even the implication that he was sitting next to him, and even the other apostles could understand that, could see that he just had a more intimate relationship with him. And based on his desire, he got what he wanted. So the question is, what's your desire of God? How much of God do you want? And the more of him that you want, the more you're going to understand what his will is for your life. So the next few sessions, what we're going to be dealing with, hopefully I could do it in 7 sessions, but if I feel like it's getting a little too wordy, I won't. We're going to go through the creation week, and I'm going to show you how in the creation week story, the will of your life was already outlined, and it's going to be beautifully understood for those of you who understand that the things that God did in the creation week were natural, but they also have more than one application because they're universal truths. The Bible is full of universal truths. When Yeshua is talking about the parable of the sower, he's not making up some possibility that can happen if you sow and then trying to extract that and use that metaphorically to prove to the children of Israel that the whole sowing mechanism is just about them. No, it applies in the natural. It's not just, his seed is going to, be scattered all over the earth and, they're going to be on that good ground or any other kind of, different understanding we can get from that. But as Paul has already told us, there is first that which is natural, then that which is spiritual. We can't even understand the spiritual if we can't understand the natural, which means that there is a physical application that applies, that directly links up to the spiritual understanding he wants us to get. And if it wasn't so, then we would never be able to understand it. Furthermore, if that wasn't so, what would be the purpose of Christ coming? That's the other can of worms that he brings up. Because if Christ did not need to come so that we can have the living example that we can, in our flesh, live to the full measure of perfection, of completion that God requires, how's we going to see it if he did not come as a man? If he came as God, we can't be God. So therefore, that couldn't have been an example for us. So he had to do it in the natural, in the flesh, with the limitations that the flesh has. He had to maximize to the glory of God. So therefore, we have to understand that the natural application can't be ignored. It's a part of the process of understanding how it spiritually applies to us. So we're going to look at how every natural thing that God did in the 7 days, in the 6 days of work that he did, so that we can get to the 7th day of rest, also applies to us as it relates to his will. And it applies in more than one way. I mean, I tell you what, I even have a teaching for those of you who are interested and want to get a balanced lifestyle and diet and time management skills about eating and things like that. I have a lesson on losing weight the healthy way. And in losing weight the healthy way, I actually go through explaining how in the 7 days of creation week, it parallels to how we can actually lose weight by applying everything he did on those days. Also applies to how we can live a more balanced life, a more healthy life, and lose weight. So these are just things I want you to consider. And I would love for you to have access to. So for sure, you will, if you want to check that out, I have that on YouTube. I did a presentation on that, losing weight the healthy way, and I outlined how you can lose weight the healthy way through the model of the 7 days of work that God did. So if that is even anything that you're of interest to you, then you can subscribe to my YouTube channel and you will find that information under my teachings. And I may even post it here on my in my Women of the Word group in Facebook. But anyway, that's all we're going to talk about this week, because we're just setting the groundwork for where we're getting ready to go. And I'm so excited for what God is going to show us. So until then, have a blessed and beautiful week. Shalom.